So today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to take a snapshot of a single day in Canada, September 8th, 2025, by looking at three stories that seem totally disconnected. We've got a crisis in the air, a really bizarre stock market rally, and a high-stakes rugby match. On their own, they're just news headlines. But together, well, they paint a fascinating picture of the national mood. Let's dig in. And this, right here, is the core puzzle of the day. On one side, you have this sudden physical shock of a plane making a hard landing, just pure crisis. And on the other, the financial celebration of a record high on the stock market. One is about dodging a disaster, the other is about finding opportunity in what seems like terrible news. So, how did these two extremes happen on the same day? Okay, so our first story kicks off with some literal turbulence, thousands of feet up over the Caribbean Sea. So picture this. A WestJet flight from Toronto heading to sunny Sint Maarten experiences what's officially called a hard landing. It was serious enough that passengers had to be evacuated using the emergency slides. I mean, that's a terrifying scenario for anyone. But here's the most important detail. Incredibly, no one was injured. It was a moment of absolute crisis that thankfully ended in total relief. A huge jolt, but a safe outcome. Now let's move from the runway to the world of finance, where a completely different kind of turbulence was happening. And this time, the result was, well, it was just plain weird. The big economic story of the day was this number right here. Canada unexpectedly lost over 65,000 jobs in August. That's a huge number, and it pushed the unemployment rate up to 7.1%, a level we really haven't seen since 2016, if you don't count the pandemic years. So by any normal measure, this is really worrying news for the economy. And yet, look at this. On the very same day that all this bad job news came out, the Toronto Stock Exchange, the TSX, closed at a record high. It broke 29,000 points for the first time ever. So you've got thousands of people losing their jobs, but the market is popping champagne. What on earth is going on here? Yeah, it feels like a total paradox, right? But there's a very specific kind of backward logic at play here. To get it, you really have to follow the money and ask yourself one simple question. What does bad news for jobs make the Bank of Canada more likely to do? And here's your answer. This chart shows what traders are literally betting the Bank of Canada will do next, and the bet is overwhelming. An 89% chance that the central bank is going to cut interest rates. And why are they so sure? Because of all those job losses we just saw. Okay, let's just break this down. It's like a chain reaction. First, those big job losses scream that the economy is slowing down. Second, that slowdown puts a ton of pressure on the Bank of Canada to do something to kickstart growth. Its main tool, cutting interest rates. And finally, just the idea of lower interest rates, which makes it cheaper for companies to borrow money and grow, gets investors really, really excited. They start buying up stocks, and boom, the market hits a record high. And just like that, bad news becomes good news. Crazy, right? So from the weird pressures of the economy, let's turn to a much more straightforward kind of pressure, the intense heat of international competition. And here, the story isn't a paradox at all. It's just about pure, unadulterated success. Over at the Women's Rugby World Cup, Canada is in some seriously elite company. As they head into the quarterfinals, they are one of only 3 teams left that are undefeated. The other two, the global powerhouses England and New Zealand. This isn't a story about luck or weird market logic. It's a story of pure dominance. And you know what's even better? Canada has played its cards perfectly. They've managed to land in a very favorable part of the tournament bracket. That means they are strategically set up to avoid their biggest rivals, England and New Zealand, until a potential final showdown. It is a clear path forward, and it's built on skill and strength. This quote from the coverage really says it all, doesn't it? In their big win over Scotland, it was the team's sheer physicality and power that just shone through. This is the team that isn't just winning games, it is imposing its will on the competition. It's a clear, confident, and incredibly successful story. So, let's pull these 3 different threads together now. We've got a story about a near disaster in the air that was narrowly avoided, a story about deep economic anxiety that somehow fueled hope in the markets, and the story of just clear-cut athletic success on the world stage. When you look at the day all together, you see these incredible contradictions playing out. You've got a crisis averted in the sky, a jobs crisis on the ground that's fueling a market rally, and a dominant performance on the pitch, creating pure national pride. It's a snapshot of a country that is feeling anxious, opportunistic, and proud, all at the same time. So it leaves us with this big question, right? Does a day like this show a nation that's truly resilient, able to dodge disaster, find opportunity in a crisis, and just excel under pressure? Or does it reveal a country that's built on risk, where the stock market feels totally disconnected from reality, and maybe luck plays a bit too big of a role? The answer is probably somewhere in the middle. It really makes you think. Thanks for tuning in.